travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here on, well, American Election Day for Hail to Stephen King. That's right, I did the whole let's get out and vote and all that silliness, you know. It's like you believe your vote counts in a world of corrupt politicians and stuff, but, you know, you still gotta let your voice be heard, even if you're voting between a douche and a turd. That's my South Park reference for the day. Welcome to the horror show. I am Jaime and Fuego. Thank you so very much for joining me here for a little bit of palaver on this terrifying Tuesday. Yes, any election day is a very terrifying Tuesday here in America and probably across the rest of the world, but registered independent, politics aside, I am so happy you are here to join me for some talk about my beloved El Rey, the only one who I will always cast a vote for. And yes, this is the show that I do twice a week, Tuesdays, and on scarific, spooktacular Saturdays. And this is one that I had a lot of fun with, because just last night, because it celebrated its 30th anniversary in the month of November of its release, this awesome, it's almost like a graphic novel, novella kind of thing, Cycle of the Werewolf. It's something that Cy King put out in 1983, November. So yeah, it was basically originally supposed to be a calendar, and they had this idea where they were going to have Bernie Wrightson, the amazing Bernie Wrightson, who worked on so many different things along with King, from the Creepshow actual comic book version of it that they did. He also worked on the fifth Dark Tower book, Wolves of the Kala, great illustrations there. Boy, what else? Trim of Buick 8 for Cemetery Dance. He did the amazing, oh boy, just so much stuff. The list goes on and on. Sadly, no longer with us. Shout out to the immense talent that was Bernie Wrightson. But so it was originally supposed to be a calendar, and King was going to write like a little vignette kind of thing for each month, obviously, all 12 months. So it was going to have 12 little accompanying bits, and he ends up deciding, you know what? I cannot be constrained. I have to actually push forward and write and turn this into like a little novella, or a novelette, as they put it when this was adapted 2 years later into a feature film called Silver Bullet. And so, gosh, guys, I gotta say, I sit down and I start rereading this last night, and I was like, well, I'm gonna read a little bit, and, you know, then I'm gonna, you know, like make some dinner, do some housework, whatever, and I couldn't put it down. And it took me about an hour or so, but I just breezed through it, because it's broken up, as I said, into months. And the cool thing is, like, for each month, there is a corresponding bit of black and white, and then there's also a corresponding color image. Like, you've got this one with the first wolf attack in January. You've got this badass one where this, like, lovelorn woman who has nobody on Valentine's Day in February, yeah, she's all sad and the wolf attacks her. And so it basically, it starts out month by month, beginning in January, obviously, with this cycle of the werewolf and this killer appearing. And of course, everybody in this town of Tacker's Mill is the Takers. I believe they pronounce it in the feature film as Tacker's Mill. But long story short, I'm adjusting the glasses because I fell asleep on the damn things while I was reading, not this, but I was reading a couple nights ago. So yeah, that's one of the bad things about being blind as a bat and reading in bed after taking out the contacts. Anyway, though, so everyone's naysaying it, and they're like, oh, it's got to be, you know, somebody, it's a rabid wolf. And then, you know, as the killings, you know, progress and they continue going down, this kid gets decapitated when he's out flying his kite. Like, this book, despite the fact that each chapter is only maybe like 3 to 4, I think in the very middle in June is when, July is when you've got like the first like big, you know, chunk of story when we first get introduced to our protagonist, this kid Marty. And but, you know, so everybody is initially naysaying and stuff, but then as the killings progress month by month, they start thinking, okay, you know, what is this? Is it really a werewolf? Is it somebody, you know, is it just a rabid animal? Is it somebody, you know, dressed up as, you know, putting a mask on or something like that? So there's lots of different theories like swirling around, but the artwork is so beautiful in this, and it's really cool because each chapter is almost like just a tiny little story in and of itself. And King's language, it feels like it's a little more simplified, but It's very descriptive. Like, he fleshes out each character in an intriguing fashion, whether it's Arnie, the guy working at the railroad, getting, you know, killed at the very beginning, or, you know, the lovelorn woman, like I said, the stuff with the kid with the kite is crazy. And, you know, all of these other characters in this town in Maine, you know, there's the cheating asshole abusive husband, there's the naysaying constable, there's just so many interesting characters, and obviously our little protagonist Marty, who is this 11-year-old kid, 10 years old in the book, 11 years old in the feature film, portrayed by Corey Haim, I don't know, the more heartthrobby of the two Coreys from, you know, the Corey duo in the 80s and stuff. But yeah, he's disabled. It's the biggest point about this, and it's something I think that they really nail home a lot more so in the movie, is about just rising up from disability and not letting that hold you back from accomplishing things and stuff. It's a theme that King, who writes the screenplay for the feature film, you know, really kind of hammered home a little bit more so. And it's a really terrific message, honestly, about just, you know, rising up above, you know, your personal constraints and, you know, deficiencies, or, you know, whatever the hand you may have been dealt could be holding you back with, you can still overcome. And it's really inspiring, honestly. But so he's the one that gets tangled up with this werewolf and trying to well, it's really a random meeting halfway through the book, because 4th of July gets canceled, and he's like, he's got this crazy uncle, which is played magnificently, erratically and amusingly by Gary Busey in the feature film, but his name is Uncle Al in the book, but you know, and he's a very small character in the book, expanded upon massively for the film, turned into Uncle Red in Silver Bullet the movie. But so yeah, Uncle Red, Uncle Al, whatever, he gives him some fireworks after, you know, all of the carnage, and there's a curfew and stuff, and 4th of July gets canceled, and he goes out and he encounters this werewolf, and he throws a bunch of black cats in its face and injures him and doesn't get killed. And that's about as far as I want to go without spoiling too much more. The werewolf is really, there's some hints as to who it is early in the book, but they don't really confirm until near the end. I think it's October, when Marty's out trick-or-treating again, that you find out who it actually is. And I'm not trying to spoil anything, because I want all of you, it's long out of print, and it's, I don't know how tough it is to track down. I've had this copy for many years, and this was actually only my second time reading it, because I read it during my first journey along the path of the beam, reading everything in order. And as you can see, if you're just stumbling upon this video, by the big, terrific tower of books behind me, Stephen King is my favorite book, and I sought out to read everything in its published order. And so I hadn't actually checked this out in about 4, maybe 5 years, something like that, and it held up just as good, if not better. It is such a fun, quick read. I love that framing device of the fact that it just goes month by month, and each month is a chapter. I think that's super, super cool. Trying to see what else I have notes-wise. Really, I think I've touched upon the predominance without really spoiling too much more. But yeah, it's just it's a fun, fascinating read. Anytime you're going with a young protagonist, you know, especially one with the physical factors like you have in this case. You know, his legs don't work, and he's going around on like a motorized little you know, wheelchair. But it's a fun read, and it's just funny though, because you would think, oh, this is probably, you know, geared more so at kids, especially with the illustrations and everything. But it's pretty brutal when it wants to be. There's multiple decapitations. There's descriptive deaths and stuff like that. One of my absolute favorite parts in this book, though, is where the local preacher, Lester Lowe, who's he's kind of like more of a minor character and stuff, but he has this dream, this werewolf dream, as the killings are progressing, and you know, he's disillusioned with everything, and with you know, the fact that he's got less of a congregation, he's not compelling them quite as much as he used to, but he has this dream where everybody starts turning into werewolves. And it's as he's giving this sermon, and the title of the sermon is "The Beast Walks Among Us." And I still remember the first time I read this, I thought that line was so dope. Like, I even incorporated it into a song I was working on with my solo project at the time. And I was like, "The beast walks among us, look closely and you'll see him, dwelling beneath the skin of all your fellow men." And I was like, yeah, that's cool. I really dig that whole vibe of, you know, there's darkness inside of all of us, and the beast is just below the surface and all this stuff. But his whole congregation starts turning into werewolves, and it's a pretty badass scene. In fact, I've got to show that illustration because it's super super cool. I think it's in the month of May in here. Yeah, something something in the month of May. Yeah, check it. If you can see it, hopefully it's not too glossy shiny. Super rad, super rad. I love this book. Down there on my shelf, there is also the later release of Silver Bullet, which was actually, so it was the script. I don't want to pull it out and have some stuff fall down because the last time my Nightmares in the Sky fell over and I was filming and I had to do a cut and I got all pissed. But it was later re-released as the Silver Bullet little like novella thing, and it also has the script for the film along with the graphic novel proper, graphic novelette, or however you want to say. So now to get into this feature film, which is pretty bonkers, if you ask me. It didn't really do super well, but it didn't tank at the theaters when it was released in 1985. But here we have, that's right, Silver Bullet. It still has yet to receive one of those like super deluxe Scream Factory, Twilight Time, whatever re-releases. But in the current King Assance, when they're putting out so many new things from, they just put out a deluxe Creep Show. They just put out as of today, I believe it is, they just put out a deluxe Sleepwalkers that I have on pre-order. Tons of other things still coming through the pipeline. Just put out Maximum Overdrive. So yeah, I would imagine it's inevitable, but this film has such a weird history that I had no idea about as I was doing some research. So Corey Haim, obviously, or Haim, as I said, you know, he was in The Lost Boys and he was in tons of other stuff. But yeah, so he plays our character of Marty Kerslow, whatever the heck it is. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, so whereas his sister, who is constantly teasing him in the book about him getting everything that he wants, you know, and being, you know, I don't know, just, you know, getting the easy treatment because he's crippled and stuff like that. Yeah, they still kind of carry over that plot line, but, you know, the sister is who King, for whatever reason, renamed from Kate to Jane. You know, he did little tinkers with the script here and there, because as I said, King wrote the script for this himself, so he penned the screenplay. He actually set it in a specific time, whereas in the graphic novelette, or whatever you want to call it, he didn't, he gave no specification as to, you know, if it was in the past or present or whatever, but he sets it in the spring of 1976, so even though the film came out in 85, he sets it in the spring of 76, and he doesn't start with January and go through a full cycle. He actually condenses things from the spring and then kind of, you know, bookends it with October. So he condenses those aspects, and he changes a few things here and there, but he really kept the script fairly faithful. And so the people behind it, producing, once again, Dino De Laurentiis, who did a ton of Stephen King stuff. I mean, he did The Dead Zone, he did Firestarter, he did Cat's Eye this same year, Maximum Overdrive the following year. He also did Sometimes They Come Back, so he produced a ton of King adaptations, and this was right in the heart of King's sweet spot, where he had ascended to his throne and he was as popular as I think he could get, but he was getting a notorious kind of, I guess, reputation for some of the adaptations being campier and cornier than others, and this one is no exception, but it still wasn't slogged by critics. Even Roger Ebert at the time gave it 3 out of 4, even though he's like, yeah, it's more like a parody of Stephen King work, but done in a loving fashion. And so we had that time change, obviously, besides Haim or whatever, and Gary Busey, who, you know, plays the wacky Uncle Red. There was also Everett McGill, who was in, like, you saw him as a bad guy in quite a few things. He was in License to Kill, the awesome Timothy Dalton James Bond movie, in my opinion. He was in the really craptastic Second Under Siege movie. He was also seen before this in the David Lynch Dune. So he plays the pastor. Yeah, or the Reverend, I guess you could say, you know, the Lester Lowe character. And then you've also got in a smaller role, that's right, the stepfather himself, Mr. Terry O'Quinn. He plays the guy who kind of steps in for the constable role, and he's like the sheriff and stuff like that. So, and King also altered ages a little bit. He made the sister just a little bit older, as he also made, you know, Marty's character a little bit older. But it's funny to me how this was a hard R, in my opinion, especially with like some of the gore. Now, there was some controversy about the werewolf effects, and with good reason, because American Werewolf in London had set the standard so high, and even The Howling too in the early 80s, so everything was going to be compared to those two, especially American Werewolf. And so the werewolf effects they do a lot of these quick cuts in the movie, so even during like the second attack, which goes down with you know, the lovelorn woman who King expands a little bit upon, and whereas in the novelette, she's a virgin and she's like longing for love and all this other stuff. In the film, she has this guy who is like, no, that's not my baby, whatever, and so she's trying to commit suicide, and that's when the werewolf comes in and slashes her up. But the gore is here. You know, even when they do the quick flashes to the werewolf, when you see the werewolf in full scope, it's, people have compared it to like a black bear. I don't know, I don't think it's absolutely terrible, but it's better in some scenes than it is than others. But, you know, for a film that stars this kid and, you know, even has this inspiring 80s cheese post-credit song and stuff like that, like you would have seen in like a Flight of the Navigator, something PG, whatever, you know, like just aimed at kids. This was a hard R with the violence and stuff, so I don't know. It's that really thin line straddling the, you know, straddling the line that so many of these films, especially when we started marketing like the Freddy Kruegers and the Jasons and even the Aliens and stuff and making toys and all this other stuff as the 80s progressed. And it's like, okay, these are hard R films, but you obviously want children to watch them, so I don't know, that's kind of a catch-22 and shows the mischievous intentions of these studios, in my opinion. But that aside, I like the initial decapitation is good, and I have to say, as far as like the best effects in the entire film for me are where they do that werewolf dream, the nightmare that the Reverend has that I mentioned, where, you know, he's given the sermon and everybody starts to transform. I think they do a damn good job with that scene. I feel like the transformations are all, they're fairly terrifying, especially if you're one of many friends of mine. I didn't see this film as a kid. I didn't even watch this until after I had read the you know, little novelette, you know, many years ago now. But I felt it was a little more cheese, I think, the first time I watched it. This was like my second or third viewing, but this is maybe where, as opposed to just having it on at a Halloween party or whatever, I actually sat by myself and took notes and watched and stuff. And I had a lot of fun with this movie. Granted, it's got some cheese dick shizzle in here, but I think it's pretty fun as far as an 80s horror movie goes, and it does have, like, for every werewolf transformation scene, there's like the scene where all of the people in the town are like, okay, when this next lunar cycle comes, we're gonna get everybody together, 40, 50, 60 men, we're gonna go out and find his ass, and so on. And so that scene, you know, with the fog in the woods and people getting pulled down, and the werewolf is like using a baseball bat to hit people. I don't know what I think about that. So there is cheese scenes like that, but so this is where I want to go into production of this film. And so obviously, you know, longtime King producer behind it, King doing the screenplay, as I said, but this was the one thing I was totally unaware of. Don Coscarelli directed most of this movie. Yeah, that Don Coscarelli. Beastmaster, Phantasm Films, Bubba Hotep, John Dies at the End, one of my favorite directors. So essentially what happened is he directed all of the scenes that didn't have any attacks and kills and creature stuff, okay? So all of the wraparound stuff with the Marty character and most of the stuff with, you know, interactions with Busey and the sister. The sister, I actually thought, does a pretty damn good job too. Megan Follows is the name of the actress. I recognized her because she went on to be Anne of Green Gables and Anne of Avalon and all that. Yes, I was subjected to that stuff as a young child, but, and King has her doing this weird adult voiceover thing, and she almost in some ways becomes the main character in some ways. She's the one telling the story, even if Marty is still our protagonist. Like, she's the narrator framing device and stuff, and it's told, the story is kind of told from her perspective to a degree, but she's more compassionate in this, and you can tell she really cares about her younger brother, even if she does still tease him and give him crap. But isn't that what all siblings are really kind of about at the end of the day? But so yeah, I think she does a great job. But so yeah, Coscarelli directs pretty much everything without creature stuff and attacks and whatnot. And then lo and behold, there was some funding stalling, and you know, they were trying to get this creature looking good, and Dino, the producer, along with his wife, are just like, nope, it looks bad, we need to redesign, we need to do this, we need to do that. And King was being staunch, along with you know, a couple other people in the production team who were actually like on set doing the creature effects and whatnot. And so Coscarelli got pissed off about having to wait around, and he decided to depart and take his name off the project. But they weren't going to reshoot all of that stuff. It's like it was like a good 2/3 or 3/4 of the movie from what I was reading. And so I actually think that where the monster stuff is lacking at times, I feel like all of the human performances and interaction and stuff are actually really, really good. Especially Busey's scenes, despite his shortcomings as being, you know, in the book, he's in like just 2 different parts. You know, he helps out with Marty making his silver bullet when he wants to actually try to go after this werewolf after he figures out who it is, and then he helps him out with the fireworks. Pretty much it. But they expand the Busey character massively, and they really show heart and compassion and connection with him and Marty as Uncle, you know, him as Uncle Red, and like all of his scenes, you know, with the sister and with Marty are really good. But the funny thing that I found out is that I guess Busey was fond of ad-libbing on set, and so many of these scenes that he did, he was just ad-libbing the dialogue. So he had like the general consensus of where he was supposed to go with these child actors, you know, because they were like 14 and like 16 respectively at the time, something like that. But his chemistry is great with them, even if he is ad-libbing. I'm sure the kids were sticking to their lines, but he says some hilarious stuff, like where they're kind of trying to explain to him who the werewolf really is after they discover who it is, and I'm not spoiling that here, but he's like, he talks to the sister and he's like, "You're always Miss Polly Practical and you're sounding crazy." And then he, you know, the kids say who they're sending these letters to, because they start like almost like badgering him into either confessing or, you know, doing all these crazy things. And he's like, you're mailing this person telling them to gargle with broken glass or eat a rat poison omelet. And I'm just thinking to myself, yeah, those lines had to have been ad-lib, but delivered by Gary Busey, they are just insane gold, seriously. And his performance is actually, it's pretty fun in this, I gotta say. So yeah, Goofy Wolf suit, we touched on that. So, but after Coscarelli decides to leave, obviously they have to bring somebody in, you know, to finish the film, and it was this guy who only filmed like the kill scenes and some of the monster stuff. You know, he ends up getting the sole directing credit. It's just like, you know, this happens so much in Hollywood, especially lately, where, you know, one person films the predominance of it, and then somebody new comes in to finish it. Just happened with the Bryan Singer Bohemian Rhapsody movie. He got fired after filming the predominance of it, but he retained the credit. It goes both ways, though. They have people come on and finish things, and then they get the credit, or sometimes the person who started it out gets the credit. So in this case, Coscarelli did not get credit. It's this guy, Dan Attias, I don't know, but this is the only feature film this guy ever did, but he has like a laundry list of TV work over 3 decades of it. Like, listen to this laundry list, peeps. Miami Vice, 90210, Sledgehammer. If y'all have never seen Sledgehammer from the 80s, a parody of Dirty Harry, it's amazing. He did Buffy, he did Sopranos, he did 6 Feet Under, Alias, Deadwood, Lost, House, tons of Sunny Philadelphia. He did True Blood, he did Heroes, and that's only like scratching the surface of this guy's TV work, and he's still working. He still directed some things just this past year. So it's funny how, you know, this guy comes on and ends up getting the full credit for directorial stuff, even though he only filmed like, you know, a smaller chunk of the finished product. So it really makes me wonder, you know, if the film could have been that much better with the fact that King was sticking so firm to the, you know, creature look and all this silliness. The creature in some parts does not look good. It looks like a guy in a suit. And ironically, it was that dude Everett McGill who plays the pastor. Like, they threw him in a suit, and they were like, yeah, you're about the proper height and stuff. We'll just throw you in the suit too. So it's kind of funny that they had another of the actors on, you know, just double up and stuff. And so that's kind of crazy. I actually really like the score in this too. You know, we always try to cover overall impressions and acting and whatnot. And I think that for the most part, despite my you know, my unconventional approach with this one on a Hail to Stephen King episode, because I always try to do the proper horror show format. I think I've covered most of the bases. So I have to mention that, you know, the sound design is really good, the roars and all that other stuff. But Jay Chataway, who did the score for this, he did the score for the first 2 Maniac Cops, for the original Maniac movie as well, which is considered one of the most notorious and grisly. It was remade with Frodo in the lead. But this guy won an Emmy for work on Star Trek Voyager, but he also did score work for DS9 and for my beloved Next Generation. So, I mean, the score is actually good. It's got it's got whimsy, it's got aspects of dread where it needs to. I hope he wasn't responsible for that horrible end credit song, because it's like as cheese dick by the numbers as they come. Like, you think the Transformers music was cheese, like, but that's like delicious, you know, manchego toast or something, whereas, you know, the one at the end of this is, yeah, gotta say, it's like your grade D government processed cheese. Anyway, though, score is great, and, you know, bottom line, obviously, this is so much better, so much better, as you would expect it to be, but I think, despite the fact that I saw some friends on the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group kind of, they were either tweeting at me, or we were, you know, face-bizzling back and forth or whatever, and they were like, yeah, the movie's really, really bad. But it's one of those so bad it's good, in my opinion. And all the stuff that doesn't necessarily deal with the werewolves, like I said, you know, it's good. And it has that great message, once again, of don't let a disability define you. And, you know, Silver Bullet has a double meaning in the title because of the fact that, well, silver bullets kill werewolves and everything, and that's the end game of a story like this, you would imagine. But Silver Bullet is also the name of the little mechanized, you know, wheelchair thing that Marty's going around in. And there's one scene in particular that just really kind of pulled on my heartstrings, like genuinely, and this was presumably a Don Coscarelli filmed scene. It's where he's sitting in his new wheels that he gets from Uncle Red. It's this really jazzed up kind of thing that is totally not street legal, and that aside from this being a small town, you would never see like an 11-year-old kid, or whatever he's supposed to be, 13-year-old in the film, that's right, you know, going around in, but, you know, because it goes hella fast. There's a particular chase scene in this after he figures out who the werewolf actually is and the person's, you know, chasing after him. That's actually one thing they did change, which I wasn't quite as fond of, is in the book, you know, there's the person who's the werewolf starts to figure it out, but they're still not themselves once they turn, whereas in the movie, the character is like completely aware of things that are going on and like is doing some cognizant killing and stuff. I wasn't as fond of that kind of illogical change, but there's a scene where he's in this roadster, his new super fast, high-powered wheelchair, and or it's almost like a tandem, like motorized, like little cart kind of thing or something. But yeah, he's being chased by, you know, this person who he's discovered is the werewolf, and it's well shot and it's pretty good. But it shows how fast this damn thing is. But I digress from my point. So Marty is sitting and he's at the baseball field and he's just watching all the other kids running around, all playing, and there's like, you know, Coscarelli like shows the kids' legs running around in shorts and stuff, and just the fact that his don't work, and, you know, it gets you, man. It really does, and it helps to hammer home the point that, in my opinion, even though there's cheesy aspects to this film and there is some bad acting from the townspeople, I feel like a lot of the framing and I presumably for me, everything that I make the Coscarelli connection with, as far as, you know, scenes and stuff like that go that involve just human characters, or main human characters, I should specify, I felt they were very effective and very good, and he got some great performances out of Busey and this young Corey kid. So I've hit pretty much all of my points, y'all. So I wanna, for good cheese, yeah, definitely think this one is a fun King adaptation. And then if you can track it down, I was looking into tracking down the original released hardcover of this because it had a very short run from Land of Enchantment for the hardcover, and that's what technically came out in November of '83. And then they re-released this in 1985 for mass paperback with Signet. And so if you can track it down though, y'all, it's awesome. It is awesome. That hardcover, though, goes for in the hundreds and hundreds. So yeah, that's another one of my King white whales, I guess you would say, along with those early Dark Tower hardcovers and a few other things, you know. But I'm actually very, very close to having amassed everything. Those Dark Towers, though, who the hell knows if you win the lottery, or, you know, become a famous whatever, or, you know, just save your ass off. Who the hell knows? But I guess that is the end of the proceedings today, y'all. So I have been Jaime in Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, this Sunday with the first new Infuegotainment content in, well, it's not been quite a year, but, you know, as the horror show took precedence, I took my attention away from it, but I think all of our ducks are in a row and we have our schedule good and set now. I'm relaunching Fuegotainment on 11 this November 11th, and there's going to be new daily content. There's going to be the Nightly Nerd News, which is where I'm going to talk about, you know, the Geektastic news that I think is the coolest, and that's going to be a live show, and then that's going to be Monday through Friday, and there's also going to be some bonus reviews and, you know, a throwback review. There's gonna be a Fresca Fuego review, which is a fresh and new film, and then there's also, you know, gonna be a retro Fuego review. So expect one of those every week, something from the past and something brand new from the present. And then the weekend show is gonna be called the Geekend Rewind, and that's gonna be just further discussion with a few people, not just myself, about the news stories of the week. And that may actually be for the first episode, at least, with my band Chiron, because I smash the skins in a band. And if you have any interest in horror, conceptual, metal music with some punk and thrash influences and stuff like that, you can check all that stuff out at reverbnation.com/ChironBandAZ. That's where we have a few of our tunes. And then if you want to check out anything like our webisode that we did about behind the screams in Chiron, about just a bunch of like monster/hunter type guys and what happens behind the scenes, and it's actually kind of amusing. You can find that at facebook.com/ChironBandAZ. So pretty much the same as the Reverby Nations. And most importantly though, here on the Horror Show, we need you to subscribe if you haven't, hit the bell if you forgot to, so that you get all of the different little notification-y things, because we do 2, in some crazy instances, 3 episodes a day. Everything from film reviews to trailer reactions to convention coverage, unboxings, video game Let's Plays. I mean, we try to be the most prolific horror YouTubers on the planet. So greatly appreciate anybody who has stopped by today. There's also going to be a very big, cool announcement coming for the upcoming 119th episode of Hail to Stephen King. It's going to be a live show, and it's going to be a very fun discussion point. So if you want a little more palaver beyond what you see below, just, you know, commenting here in the video, there is my Hail to Stephen King Facebook group. I'm the sole admin on there. We have like 319 members as I counted today. And yeah, it's really rad. We do Tower Tuesday. We do Pennywise Wednesday, where we, you know, publish art and, you know, different goofy things like that, memes and whatnot. We also just post, you know, thoughts about books that we're reading currently. We have a Book of the Month club that we do every single month, and at the end of the month, you know, we have a discussion video here on the Horror Show. Currently, it is Pet Sematary for its 35th anniversary, because that also came out in 1983. Like, seriously, 1983 was maybe King's most prolific year, aside from maybe last year. I mean, with, you know, putting out a couple books and then all the different series and movies and stuff like that came out. Next year is the year of 2019, so I'm hoping for big things. But yes, if you would like to interact with myself, all kinds of other fellow constant readers, it's a very closely knit Ka-Tet, and I have so much love for all of the awesome peeps that are on there. So without further ado, until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, I say hasta luego, sin amigos, constant readers and viewers alike around the world. Say thank you, and until next time, remember, stay scared. And if you can track it down, please, please read Stephen King's Cycle of the Werewolf. You will not be disappointed.